I was previously assigned to Engine Company 10, right across the street, and Engine Company 331. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. For those of you who participated, and those of you who generously allowed your fathers and husbands to participate, we want you to get a sense of the great accomplishment that resulted in the restoration of the National 9/11 flag. The story of the flag restoration began in Greensburg, Kansas. On the 9/11 anniversary in 2008, when the New York Says Thank You volunteers traveled to Greensburg, Kansas to help rebuild following the deadly EF5 tornado, Charlie Vichers brought the pieces of the flag with him, and when the 300 volunteers were helping to rebuild Greensburg, all the little old ladies at the Senior Citizen Center in Greensburg stitched the flag back together again. Where pieces of the flag were missing, they decided to sew in American flags that had survived the Greensburg, Kansas tornado. In doing so, they created patchwork that became known as the National 9/11 flag. In September of 2009, the New York Says Thank You Foundation, for the anniversary build, came to the Little Sioux Scout Ranch, just north of Omaha, in Little Sioux, Iowa, the site of an EF3 tornado that ripped through the camp on June 11, 2008, and killed 4 young scouts and injured over 45 others. Over 1,000 volunteers from all over the country helped build an outdoor chapel on the site of the cabin where the boys died. At the end of each build, a memorial service is held, and since Greensburg, the flag has been used as a backdrop for the closing ceremony. As 2009 turned into 2010, an idea was formed to take the flag, now known as the National 9/11 flag, to venues around the country to share the story with the American people. As the idea developed, an approach was made to the National 9/11 Memorial Museum to give the restored flag to them to display along with other artifacts from 9/11. The foundation created a goal to make the National 9/11 flag whole again by the 10th anniversary of 9/11, before it could be turned over to the museum. Thus began the historic 50-state journey. During the first part of 2010, plans were made that included development of patch material made from retired flags from all 50 states that would be sewn into the National 9/11 flag by first responders, firefighters, military personnel, police officers, veterans, and everyday heroes from around the country. An overlay map was drawn up, the first of many revisions, that indicated where each patch was to be located. Once the plan for the patches was finalized and we knew the sizes and locations of over 80 restorative patches as the states were identified, a patch was assigned to the particular venue in that state. The restoration process started with the repair of the bottom red stripe starting on the far left-hand side. Early in the tour, we had to assure the President of the Veterans of Foreign Wars because of concern that we were desecrating the flag by the addition of other flags. We told him that, in fact, the opposite was true. As we worked up the flag, those flags would be replaced with patches to restore the original 13-stripe, 50-star format. In the planning of the restoration, we agreed that only flags that are no longer fit to be flown in accordance with Title IV, Section 8, Paragraph 8 of the United States Flag Code would be used as patches. Our primary concern was that of making sure nothing was done to the flag that would be considered in violation of the U.S. Flag Code, and to ensure that the flag was displayed, restored, and handled with all the same respect shown as any other American flag. Although this became a one-sided flag when it was originally restored in Greensburg, it is handled, folded, and stored with all of the respect the symbol the United States deserves. If you've ever seen this process, try folding a one-sided flag that's 20 foot long by 30 foot wide. It takes at least 20 people in a very unique way to make it come out in the traditional triangle form so that the stars are showing through the storage case. We will visit a few of the places where the restoration of this national treasure took place, but each ceremony was as important in telling the complete story as those we are spotlighting. Starting with the state of Arkansas, number 1, on September 10th of 2010, the tour began in the state capital in Little Rock. The flag was brought to Mena, Arkansas later that day, which is the site of the New York Says Thank You build in 2010, where the ceremony continued and where Carlos Miranda, a Vietnam veteran, placed a stitch in the flag on behalf of his son, who was killed in Iraq. He asked if he could place his son's medals on the flag while he placed the stitch. We began to realize that this tour was not going to be just about the flag, but about the American people we would meet along the way, who had their own stories to tell, and about how the flag would help in the healing process for all Americans who suffered from their own tragedies. The journey then took us to Fort Hood, Texas, state number 6, on the first anniversary of the terrible shooting where 13 lives were lost. General Grimsley, who was the post commander and commanding general of the 3rd Armored Division, told us all about the extreme bravery of those first responders and others who put their life on the line every day defending this great country. The flag was also stitched by soldiers and school children who survived the shootings. Our restoration team had the privilege of holding the Hawaii State number 7 patch stitching ceremony of the fantail of the USS Missouri in Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 2010, the 69th anniversary of the attack. What an emotional ceremony. As the ceremony started, a gentleman dressed in all-white Navy uniform, who was the chief of the boat on the USS Chicago, an attacked nuclear sub that had just docked at Pearl, conducted a ceremony called Passing the Flag. He told of the history of our nation's flag while 6 sailors from the sub handed a flag from one another. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. If you've ever seen this ceremony, look it up on the internet. It's one of the most memorable tributes you will ever see. Sorry about that. The slide shows Lieutenant Colonel retired David Brostrom and his wife placing a stitch on the Hawaii patch made from 3 flags flown over several ships, including the Missouri. The family had just lost their son in Iraq and wanted to remember him with a stitch. The patch has stitches from World War II veterans, soldiers from Schofield Barracks, and Navy and Marine personnel stationed at Pearl. In January of 2011, I brought the flag to Tucson, where it was flown at the funeral of Christina Taylor Greene, who, born on 9/11 of 2001, tragically died as a result of the shooting. Family members through the parish priest requested that the flag be brought there as a tribute to a little girl who was so interested in American history. We brought the flag back to Tucson for the official Arizona stitching ceremony in July of 2011 on the 6th-month anniversary of the shooting. This might be the time to mention that as we go forward, you might want to note how the flag begins to change as a result of the restoration process. Note on this picture the bottom red stripe has been restored with patches from the first 8 states. That evening, the flag was flown overnight by myself to Atlanta in time for the official Georgia ceremony, which was held at the Martin Luther King Center. A group of people from over 75 different countries around the globe took the oath of American citizenship and became new citizens of our country in front of that flag. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s family, including his son and daughter, opened the stitching ceremony by placing their stitch in the Georgia patch, followed by many of those who took their oath as their first act as U.S. citizens. Late in 2010, we received an email from a small museum in Milford, Pennsylvania. They had a 31-star American flag in a case at the museum that we might be interested in. That flag was part of the bunting on the front of President Lincoln's box at Ford's Theater and was laid under his head after he was shot. The museum offered to give us a piece of that flag and asked that it be sewn into the national 9/11 flag. The curator was asked why she would want to offer a piece of a very historical artifact to be included in another historic artifact. She explained that President Lincoln was attempting to sew the American people back together after the Civil War, and she thought that it was a great fit for what we were doing with the national 9/11 flag, stitching America back together again. Our biggest concern was the condition of the flag, because regardless of how historical, we would not take a piece from a serviceable flag. Once the case was open and we found a few threads loose in the bottom, we couldn't refuse. A special ceremony was held at the museum on February 12, 2010, President Lincoln's birthday, where the blue threads of the Lincoln flag were located at the bottom of the display case, were sewn into the Blue Star field of the national 9/11 flag. Later, for the official Pennsylvania State ceremony, the patch included a piece of the last flag flown over the crash site in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Late in February of 2011, the flag traveled to Kennedy Space Center's Visitor Center and Museum for one of 2 Florida state stitching ceremonies. After the ceremony, the flag team and the flag was taken out to the launch pad where the Space Shuttle Discovery was being prepared for a launch a few days later. In March of 2011, the flag and team traveled to Palm Springs, California. The day following the stitching ceremony at a local school, Marines from 29 Palms held the flag on the field for the national anthem to open the annual PNB Paraba Tennis Tournament. In April, after a visit to Columbine High School in Littleton for the Colorado ceremony, the flag was brought to Oklahoma City for the official State of Oklahoma stitching ceremony. It was timed to coincide with the 16th anniversary of the Murrah Federal Building bombing. After a very moving ceremony outside of the memorial, the National 9/11 flag was brought into the Oklahoma City National Memorial Museum for the stitching ceremony. The Oklahoma patch came from a retired flag that flew over the memorial on the 15th anniversary of the bombing. On May 9th, the flag was on the field for the playing of the national anthem at the start of the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs. The previous day, the flag was at the Kentucky Capitol in Frankfort for the official Kentucky stitching ceremony. Later that month, the flag was taken to Gallup, New Mexico for the official State of Mexico stitching ceremony. We'd been requested to have the flag at two sites, one along each of the central and southern routes of an annual journey called the Ride for the Wall, where motorcycle riders, mostly Vietnam veterans, travel from the West Coast in a week-long ride, ending the ride at the Vietnam Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. Along the central route, the ceremony took place in Gallup. The southern route ceremony was held later in Meridian, Mississippi. In Gallup, the patch was stitched by over 300 people that day, including many Vietnam veterans, 5 of the remaining Navajo code talkers from World War II, a Bataan Death March survivor from World War II, and a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient from the Korean War. One of the most memorable venues where the flag was displayed last year was in conjunction with the Ohio stitching ceremony held at the Museum of the United States Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in late June. After the ceremony, the flag took center stage for a military tattoo concert on the base attended by over 45,000 people. The United States Air Force Band of Flight conducted an hour-long tribute to 9/11 to start the concert. Because of a stiff wind at the beginning of the concert, the flag could only be displayed for the playing of the national anthem. The tribute highlighted the history of the national 9/11 flag and the heroism of the FDNY and others whose bravery and courage on 9/11 will always be remembered. Ohio marked the 33rd state visited by the flag, and as this slide shows, the flag is beginning to take on a more traditional look. Some of the original 11 flags sewn on in Greensburg in 2009 have been removed and replaced with state patches. We were invited to participate as the Grand Marshal for the annual 4th of July parade and celebration in Southport, North Carolina. From Raleigh-Durham, a 2-mile-long escort of 800 Patriot riders, fire trucks, police cars, and other emergency vehicles and communities over along the way accompanied the flag to Southport. After the parade on the 4th, over 700 people stitched the North Carolina patch during a 4-hour ceremony before the big fireworks display that evening. On July 14th, the flag was brought to Washington, D.C. for a very special stitching ceremony. Members of the Congress and other dignitaries gathered in the Kennedy Caucus Room of the Russell Senate Office Building, the room where the Watergate hearings were held, for those of you who remember, for the stitching ceremony. Added Flag Company out of New Jersey assisted us throughout the tour in ensuring all the patches were properly secured to withstand the constant handling of the flag. They supplied a patch of the missing top 3 rows of the star field for the Washington, D.C. patch. Over 400 people, including members of both the House and Senate, as well as their staffs, participated by helping stitch this flag patch. After the ceremony, we brought the flag to the Senate side of the Capitol building for pictures. We saw a group of Boy Scouts on tour at the Capitol and asked if they can help us hold the flag as we sang God Bless America on the Capitol steps. By far, one of the most memorable stops on the tour was in South Dakota. The stitching ceremony was held in the sculpture studio at Mount Rushmore, where members of the National Park Service and Miss South Dakota of 2011 helped us sew the South Dakota patch onto the flag. Before the ceremony, we brought the flag in front of the monument for several pictures. After the ceremony, we were invited to visit the Crazy Horse sculpture, and were honored to bring the flag on top of the mountain in front of Crazy Horse's face for more photos. In August of 2011, the flag was taken to West Webster, New York. Sorry about that. August of 2011, the flag was taken to West Webster, New York. The West Webster Fire Department had a flag display in their firehouse as well as a stitching ceremony. Two members of that fire department, Tomas Kachufka and Mike Chivarini, took stitches in the flag. On December 24th, 2012, those two firefighters were killed by a shooter that had ambushed them at a house fire. Later that evening, the flag was brought to Frontier Field, home of the Rochester Red Wings. Members of the Rochester Fire Department, Rochester Police Department, U.S. Border Patrol, and 50 members from various fire departments in Monroe County carried the flag onto the field for Military Appreciation Night. The appropriate ending state for the flag tour was the state of New York and the city of New York. The flag was brought to Breezy Point on September 5th for the official New York State stitching ceremony. At the National 9/11 Memorial Museum dinner on September 7th, the National 9/11 flag formed the backdrop for a very memorable evening. This tour would not have been completed without a visit to the Pentagon. We were invited for a very special ceremony to honor those who died not only at the Pentagon but in the field of Shanksville and in New York. A special patch was made from a flag donated by a member of the Fire Department in New York and placed at the top of the National 9/11 flag. Members of the Defense Department, including Secretary of Defense and Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, attended a very moving ceremony in the center courtyard of the Pentagon on September 9th. All of us who have been involved in the flag tour and those from the foundation began a discussion in June as to where the flag was going to be on September 11th of 2011, the 10th anniversary of 9/11. After much soul searching, it was decided that although the flag was and always will be part of the history of 9/11, we felt that it just wasn't about 9/11 but about 9/12 and should be shared with all of America. The city of Joplin, Missouri, as you well know, was hit with a deadly EF5 tornado on May 22nd of 2011. What a fitting ending to the tour to bring the flag to Joplin to help the healing process in that devastated town. We gathered in front of what was left of St. John's Hospital on the morning of 9/11 to remember those who had died not only in Joplin, but also to all the victims of 9/11. The flag was held by emergency responders from Joplin, as well as people from New York for 30 minutes, and a minute of silence observed to commemorate the collapse of each tower of the World Trade Center. What an emotional experience for all of us. This was followed by a very special stitching ceremony when nearly 1,100 citizens of Joplin patched the uneven edges to complete the repair of the National 9/11 flag. We were invited to Baltimore, Maryland last June 14, 2012 to help celebrate the 200th anniversary of our nation's flag. The New York Sostanky Foundation and National 9/11 flag were offered 3 red threads from the original Star-Spangled Banner that flew over Fort McHenry in Baltimore Harbor at the start of the War of 1812. During the ceremony, threads of the original Star-Spangled Banner, which now hangs in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., was sewn into the National 9/11 flag at the Flag House Museum in Baltimore. The Flag House Museum includes the home of Mary Pickersgill, where it's said that she and her daughter had hand-sewn that flag that ultimately flew over Fort McHenry in Baltimore Harbor during the British bombardment of the fort and inspired Francis Scott Key to write the poem, which, as you know, became our national anthem. What a thrill that was to experience a ceremony connecting the National 9/11 flag to the original Star-Spangled Banner. This flag was transferred to its rightful home on May 21st, 2014, escorted, as always, by FDNY Honor Guard. What an incredible journey it has made, and what incredible people have been involved. I apologize for the syncing of some of the photos. It's been a very long journey for myself, my Finney brothers, my brothers from the Utica Fire Department, Travis Ford from Nashville, Tennessee. Restoring this flag and bringing it back where it belongs, which is here at the World Trade Center site. On behalf of myself and our brothers, I want to thank you all for being with me on a very emotional day, and may God bless America. What I'd like to do,
Respect
What I would like to do is ask all of the